Big sky, big potential. In association with Mills and Reeve, this is Eastern Promise. Achieving more together. Welcome to Eastern Promise, sharing the very best of the East of England with the whole wide world, shouting proudly that our region can answer many of the wicked challenges facing us, regionally, nationally and globally. I'm Mike Rigby, and this week we're in Leeds. No, it's okay, we're not lost. At the UK Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure Forum 2024 and the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authorities Pavilion. Here, the Combined Authority didn't only encourage informed, incisive debate on a range of issues facing Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, it showed a marked openness to holding these discussions in a forum of practicality, positivity and heart. Join me now, if you will, for the inaugural All-Star panel. How do we develop the Cambridge phenomenon with community at its heart? Earlier this year, the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities published The Case for Cambridge. A document which, in its own words, outlines the economic rationale for the growth of Cambridge and its potential to enhance its position as Europe's science capital. This included setting out core design, movement and placemaking principles that will underpin this proposed endeavour, along with the actions the then government said it and its partners are taking to deliver infrastructure enhancements and accelerate the development of key sites in and around the city. Local politicians in Cambridge and the wider region reacted with caution, welcoming the government's acknowledgement of the issues bedeviling the sustainable growth of Cambridge, whilst at the same time calling for more and better details of what was being proposed. This then was the backdrop for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Pavilion at UKREiiF, the 2024 UK Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure Forum, where the inaugural panel event was entitled How Do We Develop the Cambridge Phenomenon with Community at its Heart? It's undoubtedly the right question, and it's a debate I remain honoured to have been invited to chair. First though, before we meet the panel, let's hear some words of welcome from friend of Eastern Promise and the elected Mayor of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, Dr. Nick Johnson.
Good morning. Our time is now, and that is our rallying call, so please remember that. So thank you all for being here with us today on this lovely Leeds morning for an inaugural UKREiiF Pavilion event. I suppose, introduce myself. I'm Dr. Nick Johnson, a very proud Metro Mayor of the Combined Authority of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So I'm not going to say a huge amount quite now. You can see what we've got in front of us in terms of fantastic, excellent panellists. But before I go into introducing the guests, I want to just first acknowledge the work that's actually brought us here today and making this happen. This is the first time. I have the benefit of being here on 3 occasions, the third UKREiiF obviously this year, but Cambridge and Peterborough has not had a pavilion before. I think it's an absolute marker of where we are as an organisation, where we are as a region, and where we are as Team Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So on behalf of the organisation, I want to say a huge and heartfelt thanks for such an outstanding effort and achievement to get us here. I know for some people you're already knackered, but you should be very, very, very proud, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is a real pleasure to be here. So to our panellists. Well, I'm going to start with Mike. Mike Rigby, who I believe is also going to be chairing this opening session. Mike is the CEO of Eastern Promise and a major proponent of what the region of the East of England should be capable of. Jackie Sadek, the chair of the UK Innovation Corridor. Peter Freeman, and my new buddy, CEO of Homes England and chair of the Cambridge Delivery Group. And my other buddy, not to put you out of it, Mike Davey, leader of Cambridge City Council. But my wife wouldn't allow it. Okay, I'm sure you'll all agree, an impressive group, ready to talk about an important subject. Ensuring our communities at the heart of the developing Cambridge phenomenon. Indeed, this was the main theme of a speech I gave on Friday alongside Peter at the Cambridge Development Forum event. As I said then, Cambridge has long been a catalyst of its own success, but it's also an integral and independent part of the wider region. A wider region that, without question, will be essential to the city's future success. So essential in solving many of the problems of water scarcity, undersupply of housing, and ongoing provision of infrastructure required by a fast-growing economy and population. So solving those problems, it does require consent, and that's important as to how we bring our communities with us. How do we win local support for what will ultimately be nationally vital infrastructure? Can all involved be convinced of the case for Cambridge? I'm an optimist, but a pragmatist, and I believe that we most definitely can, but we absolutely won't if we disregard the need. I am absolutely sure and want to make Cambridge 2050 work. It will be a force for good for the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I'm very ready and willing to make the case for what will be an enormous undertaking. So, I believe wholeheartedly that together in a genuine partnership of properly empowered professional expertise and comprehensive democratic accountability, we can build what the future of our great region will depend upon. And with that said, thank you again for being here with us this morning, and I'll leave you in the very much more capable hands of the excellent Mike Rigby. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this on? Are we on? Are we on? Oh, good. Well, good morning. We've brightened it up this morning for Leeds, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here at the Team Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Pavilion. It's a really pleasure to see so many people standing room. Oh, this is great. I feel I should really kind of stay above the fray a bit and you know, be strictly neutral, but just to introduce what I do very quickly. Eastern Promise is a not-for-profit community interest company. It's dedicated to showcasing, cheerleading, and raising aspiration in and for the east of England, not necessarily as one amorphous blob, but taking each county, each town, each district, each institution, each community on its own terms. And my point of view, very simply, is there is potential, there is opportunity. We can seize it. We have to obviously tread with sensitivity, but it is there to be seized if we can all pull together and do it the right way. And with that, I shall hand the microphone to Jackie Sadek. Just do an opening introduction.
So, dropping all my clobber, very stylish, not a good start. My name's Jackie Sadek. I am the chair of the UK Innovation Corridor. What is that, I hear you ask? It is a voluntary partnership of 15 local authorities. Ditch the papers. Ditch the papers. 15 local authorities, 6 universities, hundreds of life science companies, up and down our geography from North London up to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Thrilled to be here. Want to congratulate Cambridgeshire and Peterborough on such a brilliant pavilion. As you say, Mike, standing room only. Delighted to be with you this morning.
Hello, I'm Peter Freeman, chair of the Cambridge Delivery Group, but also of Homes England. And I just want to, can you hear me? If that's working. I'll shout. Just putting the Cambridge project in the context of all of Homes England and the government's work, and thanking my new best friend, the Mayor, for inviting me. We're going to be best friends for life because it's going to take 25 years to see through the project that we're starting together in Cambridge, and I probably won't last 25 years. I'll be 93, but I'll definitely be going back. And yesterday, I was in an interministerial group talking about Cambridge and Barrow, and one of the ministers from another department was saying, you know, what's levelling up doing in Cambridge? Isn't Cambridge rich enough? And what I'd like to get across is how the government wants to support different sorts of interventions in different sorts of places. Cambridge is rich, but its housing prices are too expensive. They're about 14 times national average, 14 times wages. So we've got to get more housing in. Cambridge is the most brilliant innovation centre, 23 unicorn companies, hundreds of Nobel Prizes. But companies won't come there anymore because they can't get staff there and the transport's bad. So with Cambridge, the government will be leaning in to help fund the upfront infrastructure so it can grow in a sustainable way. And infrastructure must include health, education, parks and playgrounds too. Switching to the north, the money that Cambridge generates ultimately will help the north. And in Homes England, we can go from places like Blackpool, where most of our money has to be grant that's not coming back and pays for most of the cost of a building, to places like Cambridge, where if the government invests heavily in infrastructure up front, the money will eventually come back through Cambridge and help the rest of the country prosper. It's a fabulous place and I'm very pleased to be associated with it.
I was just waiting for an applause there, but just to speak to that, I had a fantastic experience going to visit Cambridge United and the work they do in supporting the communities around them, and their strategy for the work they do in the community is absolutely first class. I've never seen anything quite so good as that. But I'll let Councillor Davey introduce himself.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay at the back? As a season ticket holder at Cambridge United, I'm delighted that Mike has referenced them so early. Although I must stress, I'm not a Cambridge United supporter. I just go there to watch football occasionally. I'm Mike Davey. I'm the leader of the Labour-run City Council. We've been in charge in the city for the last 10 years, and we had a very good election result last week, which means that we've got another 2 years at least to be responsible for running this great city. I think for me, the key part, and I'm very grateful to being invited to speak today, is that it's about how we invest in the future. And whilst it's, I suppose, 40 years, I think, since Cambridge phenomenon was first described in the Financial Times, I think the Gove announcements allow us to have a reset and a review of how things have gone over the last 45 years. And with an eye, as I think Peter's just saying, for the future. I think our role within this is to look for what goes on in 25 years rather than now. And that's a hell of a challenge and a hell of a responsibility, but one that I have to say I'm looking forward to being part of. So thank you, Mike.
Right, if I can invite you to hold on to the mic. Mike. The title today is How Do We Develop the Cambridge Phenomenon with Communities at its Heart? And I'd just like to invite you now to just unpack for us what, for yourself, community actually means. What is community? Is it the city as a whole and the various sort of smaller communities within it? What does it mean to you?
It could be very easy to get into trite language because communities can mean anything to everybody, and just by saying we're here for the community can be quite a bland statement to make. So it's got to be something more than that. It's got to be realistic. And I think what's interesting about Cambridge and the pleasure of being part of Cambridge, it's part of a national community. I think for a starting point for me, we are one of 3 cities in the country that are net contributors to UK wealth. So therefore, anything that we do, as Peter has indicated, has an impact upon the country as a whole. I think we could probably do more structural work with other regions, but I think one of the key places we're looking to, oddly enough, is Manchester. We're doing quite a lot of interesting work with Manchester at the moment about how we develop the links between the universities and also the cities. So that's the sort of national perspective. But locally, I think there's some sort of core principles that we would want to be part of. I think started off with homes. We are keen. We are a developer ourselves. We've got a great partnership with Hill, and we've built over 1,000 homes, of which 600 at least are council homes. And I think in a city like Cambridge, where there is a huge wealth gap, you start off by building a community, by ensuring that people have places to live, not just those who come into the city, but those who are residents. We have over 3,000 people on our council house waiting list. So in terms of placing community at the heart, you begin by giving people security. So that's the first thing. And the second is about jobs, fairly obviously. Again, whilst we're delighted that people come into the city and work in the city, nonetheless, we have to make sure that people who are already here, 200,000 or so who live in the conurbation, have work. So therefore, the kind of initiatives we're delighted to see at Biomedical Campus, of the 19,000 employees that are there, 3,000 are apprenticeships. And that demonstrates to me a commitment from local industry for the local community. So I think that's really important in terms of way forward. But then there's the softer stuff, I think, as well, in terms of how you build a community. It's about the cultural offering. It's about ensuring that people have open spaces. And when we're looking at the sort of developments that are forecast around 2050, you have to put in place deliberate space for people to be. It has to have the ability to continue to be a city which is biodiverse. So you have to make sure there's green areas and green spaces, and you have to make sure you protect the environment within the development that happens. It's important to stress as a city council, we're not anti-growth, but we are in favour of sustainable green growth. And I think the two are not incompatible. I think another area that I think we're very keen to see developed, obviously, is in addition to culture, it's also about how sports develop. Mike's indicated the notion of the role the football club plays in the city, which has been a really important and fantastic thing for us. I think, finally, I suppose, in terms of how we start to place build, is about how you look at how the Cambridge as a whole contributes to this. I think one of the issues we first faced, which Peter's well aware of, when Mr Gove started making announcements about Cambridge, they were done in the Sunday Times without telling us. And that felt slightly odd, because if you're seeking to build a community, if you're seeking to build the best for the development of the city, you need to be in touch with the communities that are already there, because otherwise it just feels imposed and top down. So therefore, for us, as this council, we think we have a responsibility to represent our residents. And therefore, if you're building a community, they have to be involved in that process. So when we look at a development corporation, it'll be no surprise that we're looking for a locally led one, if at all possible. But it's also about broader, because in a city like Cambridge, if you ignore the biomedical campus, if you ignore the fantastic life sciences industries, if you ignore the university, and I make a differentiation, if you ignore the university and the colleges, who have a very different role to play in our city, then you're making a mistake. And all that needs to go alongside genuine stakeholders and the communities that we serve, the residents. So that is how I would unpick that. I hope that's all right, Mike.
That is perfect. Thank you very much. No, not at all. And you've highlighted a couple of areas to which I will return in due course. But if I could ask you just pass the mic back to Peter for a second. I'm always wary of doing this, but a quick show of hands. Who here was at the Innovate Cambridge Summit in October 23? Well, there's going to be another one next year. I strongly urge you to all attend. But Peter, you spoke at that summit, and one thing that impressed me greatly was the sensitivity with which you approached the task that the Secretary of State has asked you to fulfil. I mean, slightly referencing what Mike said, it does feel like, I mean, you've set about your task with tremendous sensitivity, if I may say so. And I've written down here, slightly mischievously, one ministerial statement undoes 6 months of patient diplomacy. So how have you chosen to tailor your approach to the communities that Mike's outlined?
It's a very complicated project, and I do think of it as a project because it involves several 100,000 people. It involves at least 4 tiers of local authorities. If you got down to parish councils and wards, it's probably getting on for 200. So to begin with, we have concentrated on the leadership of the 4 councils and their officers. We finally met or speed dated online all the councillors of the city in South Cambridgeshire last week, and we're going to start with parish councils shortly. It's difficult. I've spent most of my life in the private sector. In the private sector, you can sit down and decide who you're going to engage with when. In the public sector, you discover that the Secretary of State needs to check in with the Cabinet Office, needs to check in with number 10. But I think my overall view is you are open, you are honest, you don't promise things that you can't deliver, you listen, and you buy time. You know, this is a government with an election coming soon, which would like to do things tomorrow, and you cannot design the sensitive growth of a town tomorrow. So it's all about, for me, building relations, getting the evidence base, getting trust and confidence that what we ultimately recommend and have to carry Mike and Nick and others with us is something that works for everybody.
And Jackie, you'll know all about this. Thank you. If I could ask you to. Thank you very much, Peter. You know all about this. I mean, I've sat in meetings in a very minor capacity with ministers and Secretary of State talking about housing, and this was way back. This was when Sajid Javid was at DCLG, as was, and it was exemplars. We must have exemplars. I want to know about exemplars. Give me exemplars. And so that, you're right, that really does put the time pressure on it, but the buying time point is an excellent one. Jackie, you have been a special advisor in government, and you are now chair of the UK Innovation Corridor, as you've outlined. So you've seen things from the top down, and you've seen things currently from the bottom up. And I wanted to ask you to reflect on those sort of two approaches and where you think everything will meet in the middle, if I can put it like that.
A fantastic question, I have to say. Now, before I get to that, I just want to say a couple of things to Peter's introduction. First of all, of course, you're going to be 93. You are Peter Pan. We are Peter Pan, the Peter Pan of the housing industry, and we're expecting you to make 93 and beyond. That no pressure or anything. Just to say also, your points about levelling up, I think, are really well made. I struggle with the whole concept of levelling up because sometimes that is read as meaning that you do down places of the country in the country that are successful. Now, we're here talking about Cambridgeshire today. Obviously, the Innovation Corridor straddles London and Cambridge. If either London or Cambridge were a problem, they are a problem that other countries would kill to have. These are incredible assets for us. And actually what we ought to be doing is leveraging those in order to pay for the agenda in the rest of the country. And I'm totally and utterly committed to that. And certainly in the Innovation Corridor, we've got a GVA of 189 billion. You know, with a voluntary partnership running this thing, it's absolutely extraordinary. Cheapest Chips organisation that's overseeing a GVA of 189 billion. We could double that by 2040, and I know that Cambridgeshire and the Oxcam corridor in particular could add to that contribution, and this could pay for the agenda that we're all committed to levelling up the rest of the country. So I just want to say those are points really well made, Peter. So, Mike, to try and answer your question, I'm very much a bottom-up woman, always have been a very bottom-up woman, and I really struggled to be a top-down girly when I was in government, because actually I believe that the experts in any place are the people who live there. And what you've heard from both Peter and Mike is that the Cambridgeshire project, and I agree with you, it is a project, the Cambridgeshire project is in good hands, really good, sensitive hands of people who are going to bring the existing community with them. Because what you're trying to do is create a clean, green, inclusive, sustainable community, delivering thousands and thousands of homes. This is quite controversial, and you cannot do it without bringing the existing community with you. And I'm sick and tired of telling people that the experts in any place are the people who live there, but it's the honest truth. The experts in any place are the people who live there. So I would like to just heartily endorse the fact that these guys are leading the charge. If I'd been you, I'd have been absolutely incandescent with rage about Michael Gove's announcement, and I'm surprised you were as professional and diplomatic as you were. I'd have had a right hissy fit. But anyway, there we go. That's just me telling the truth as ever, and I can't help myself. But, you know, what to say? I think it's in safe hands now. My final observation would be this, and Peter, you and I have had this spat in public before. Absorbing 150,000 new homes into Cambridgeshire is going to be a hell of a stretch. You know, let's be frank. Nobody in the industry believes you're going to do this. And I'm not just saying it's because the chief executive of Huntingdonshire is in the room, but surely places like Huntingdonshire, dare I say my old squeeze in Wisbeach, all these places could potentially benefit from some of the growth being extended. And my last and final point is this. The Innovation Corridor is championing Harlow, all this UKREiiF, and I'll be pushing Harlow to be absorbing some of Peter Freeman's Cambridge delivery plan growth.
Well, you were right, Connie. Absolutely. Nitro, that is. Can I just, I'm bound to say, as someone who takes the whole of East of England as his self-appointed bailiwick, Peter, Could I to build on Jackie's point about not just the rest of Cambridgeshire, but we spoke very, very briefly before this about the rest of the east of England, where there are towns, if you take, I'm looking at my friend and colleague from Brecon Council right over there, like Thetford, which has a beautiful, beautiful historic core, fantastic bones, and the space, the quality of life to certainly, and the connections to offer Cambridge assistance and support. Is that something perhaps you could consider adding to the places you look to get this moving and absorb that growth?
One of the things I'm grateful to the Secretary of State for is introducing me to the term "you can't borrow the ocean," and you can't take on everything. And one of the things I strongly believe in, and why I think a development corporation would be helpful, is focus. And I spent 20 years of my life basically working on King's Cross, where that was complete focus. So in answer to that, we should liaise with everybody in Wisbech, Thetford, Huntingdon, counties and districts all around. But I think ultimately, to deliver well for the area within a 10-mile radius of central Cambridge, there will have to be a laser focus on that. But it should bear in mind the transport connections and the possibility of job transfers to all the other areas. But you can't take on all, because you will dilute it too much.
That's a point well made. Mike, I shall come back to you. And to refer back to something you mentioned earlier, and to change the topic slightly, there's a thing called the technician commitment. I don't know if you're aware of it, but what basically that is, University of Cambridge, Anglia Ruskin, the institutes back in Norwich, they're all signatories. And what it does is to promote the visibility of technicians, because actually only a very small percentage of what we would call science and research is actually done by scientists and researchers. There's a whole universe of people required to make that happen. And I'm just sort of interested to sort of pick your brains on this and how that can help you sell this idea that it's not just about the eggheads and the boffins. We need a whole universe of people to make it happen, because it ain't going to happen without them. So is that going to help you in any way? You've worked with young people.
Well, I have, yeah. For most of my professional life, I did work with young people. I think it does help, but there's an issue, I suppose, about encouraging aspiration amongst young people, particularly if you look at the broader Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, there's parts of Cambridge where young folk don't have aspirations. But if you go outside into the fens, that's certainly the issue. And if we're looking at genuinely using the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area and the combined authority, how the skills operate becomes a vital part of that. I said in my opening remarks that the biomedical campus has 3,000 apprentices, which I have to say, until 6 months ago, I didn't know. And there's a bit about sharing that information. So it's again about letting people know what's potential, what the possibilities are, and being sure that we therefore address those issues and give the support to make that happen. So I think there's a local issue, but again, I'd go back to the national bit. Cambridge is going to, whoever's in power, and obviously I have a view as to who I think it should be, whoever's in power is going to have to use Cambridge as a part of national regeneration. That means, as Jackie said, proper levelling up, and therefore there has to be good relationships with other parts of the country. So you've mentioned Innovate Cambridge. Innovate Cambridge have worked with an equivalent organisation in Manchester, and they're creating innovation hubs, which is fantastic. And that, we hope, will lead to not only jobs being created for the whole of Cambridge and Peterborough, but potentially jobs for Manchester as well. And then you can genuinely look at levelling up across the country. So that's the sort of ambition I would have, but you have to start with making sure the skills are there and the aspirations are there, which means putting in hard yards with young people who live within the area.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see that a start's been made. We've got Cambridge Tech Week coming up in September, where the Friday, the final day, is the Tech Futures Day, where that's open to schools to send people. And I've done the tour of places like Cambridge Consultants, which blew my mind away. We've got Prashant Shah right there in the audience, the mover and shaker behind Cambridge Wide Open Day on the 12th of June. It's great to see that Cambridge you're welcome, is opening its doors to show people its wares. And Peter, can I just pass the mic back to you and ask you to reflect on what Mike said, and possibly also the not just the skills, the infrastructure for skills, but the infrastructure itself that's needed to help Cambridgeshire succeed. How are we going to sort of untie the Gordian knot on that one?
I think of it sort of in balance sheet terms almost, or menu terms. You need to list all of the improvements to infrastructure, whether it's transport or water or power or phones or health or education, and sum up a cost that is, in a sense, a pro rata cost to any increase in employment and any increase in housing. And then you have to say how you're going to pay for it. And because of the underlying value of the Cambridge land and the high values of occupational cost, I do believe you can make the balance sheet stack up with some significant upfront pump priming from Treasury, but with the view to the Treasury recovering the money over the 25 years. And I think the important thing, which is one of the reasons I say, you mustn't get rushed, is if you just say, well, we'll start here, that bit hasn't got an infrastructure deficit, we'll do something there tomorrow. You haven't got a joined up plan. It doesn't necessarily matter quite what order the overall 25-year happens, but you've got to know what the jigsaw looks like and what the outside frame. When you start a jigsaw, you do the outside first. Well, I do. Maybe other people are cleverer, but I think it's eminently achievable if you assemble the right people and just do it step by step.
Absolutely. Ask you to pass the mic to Jackie and just invite Jackie to reflect on that and your experience and where do you start sort of assembling the jigsaw? What's your first steps we should be taking?
Well, it's really funny, isn't it? Because having spent 40 years working in urban regeneration and property development, every time I'm working in the public sector, which is about half of that time, I always feel that all the power lies with the private sector. And every time I'm with the private sector, I think, oh my God, the public sector holds so much power. And, it's an extraordinary, it is an amazing phenomenon whereby both sectors believe that the other's in the ascendancy. And actually, when you then bring in government, central government, it adds to the complexity of all of this is amazing. I think Peter's absolutely right that you've got to assemble all the bits of the jigsaw on the table. I do find it a little bit frustrating that central government, are leaving Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to sort out the water scarcity problem without a huge amount of support, as far as I can work out. That there isn't sufficient. Well, yeah, but there's not enough flexing of the muscles from central government to help you, in my view. And I think if you had a few more empowered people in Whitehall, it might do. And I have to say also, having been in this game an awful long time, as I've already confessed, there are things that could be put in order locally that I think could also support the effort. And I'm sorry to have to say this, but your governance is utterly unfathomable. There are so many layers and tiers of government in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough that I'm in the game and I don't understand them, and I chair a corridor that subsumes them all, and I don't understand it all. God knows where the market is in all of this. Why would? So I think streamlining your offer and streamlining your approach to market would help hugely. Market loves Cambridge despite all its issues and all of its problems, all the constraints upon it. The market absolutely loves it. But I do feel that whilst you have to get all the bits of the jigsaw on the table at the same time, that it does need all four sectors, if I can put it that way, central government, local government, the private sector and the community sector to join in on a collaborative effort of making sure that all the bits of the jigsaw are on the table in a sharing and collaborative way.
That's really interesting, and it's lovely to get a bit of back and forth and a bit debate, spirited, good-natured debate going. Peter, if I could just come back to you, and then I'll come back to Mike. Obviously, it will escape nobody's attention that there is an election campaign on the horizon, and whilst I'm not going to ask anybody to be indiscreet, I will ask. I can ask you, but there was a fairly. I think we know. You can be indiscreet. Obviously, are you anticipating, or indeed you may have already started this, but starting over with a new, are you ready to basically start over with a new bunch of ministers who want to know why they should be continuing with this? Or is that case already very well advanced and very well to be made? And if they want exemplars, are you ready to thrust them forward at them?
One of my disappointments on coming to Homes England 3.5 years ago is it was just before the conference season. I'd never been to part of little conferences, and I thought, I'll go to those. And I was told, oh, no, you won't. You're a civil servant now, so you don't go to part of political conferences. Equally, as a civil servant, I am not to speak to Her Majesty's opposition until the starter's whistle is blown. So I'm going to pass the question as to what a Labour incoming government, if it came in, might think of Cambridge too much.
Thank you.
That was
very
sneaky.
discreet. I understand when I was listening to the radio this morning that the shadow minister for DLUC is making an announcement about 200 metres away in 45 minutes about exactly what we're talking about. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Angela says. I think there's two things to say. First of all, I don't make any assumptions we're yet in power. I think that would be hugely mistaken and complacent. And that's nothing to do with the politics of who I obviously want to win. It's just about there's a long way to go. And I think if you make assumptions, particularly start to make judgments about what might happen in Scotland, for example, that would be an error. So that's the first thing to say. So I don't want people to be complacent that there will be a Labour government coming in. But it's quite apparent from the discussions that we're having that what we would propose about trying to make sure genuine levelling up takes place, which is based around growth, which is based around genuine sustainable growth, we won't be a million miles away. And I think it's important to stress that. So I would be absolutely astonished if Cambridge, subject to a Labour government coming in, is not part of that process. Because if you go back to the point I made at the start, if you're looking at national growth, you start with where there is growth. You start with who contributes to the national economy. So there has to be some resolution that includes Cambridge. And therefore, I think that's number one. But I would also hope, again, that it's back to Jackie's point, I think, that there's genuine levelling up. So that the companies that work and exist in Cambridge look at potentially jobs elsewhere. So the research and development might take place in my city, but you might get jobs and work taking place in Durham, Manchester or wherever. And I think that's a really important thing to take forward. And I'd hope there would be an emphasis from what Angela says later on today about that.
Right. Where is that, by the way?
I think it's in the, people will suddenly be a flood of people leaving.
Yes. Seal the tent.
I think it's in the West Yorkshire tent later on, but Tracy Brabin's thing. But anyway.
Oh, right. Right. If I could ask you to pass the mic back to Jackie. Slowly but surely, I should really pass it to you. I'm sorry, I'm being lazy. So I just wanted to take you back in the mists of time to when you were working as a special advisor for Lord Heseltine, who's obviously had a lot to do with regeneration in Liverpool, Liverpool, and just ask you to reflect on his approach, perhaps, if the past is prologue, on what his approach was and your approach with him to that engagement with communities and how that was received there, and what can we learn?
Well, I will answer that question, but I can't help myself but comment on the previous one. Forgive me. So I need you to know that I was in government the last time we had a change of government, admittedly only from a coalition government to a Conservative government, and it was hilarious. I cannot begin to tell you how amusing it was to watch all these civil servants scrabbling around, putting on their lipstick and getting downstairs to meet the new minister. It was absolutely hilarious to watch, and I really do look forward to the transition. But I think the guys are absolutely right. I mean, whatever the Labour Party, and I would put money on the Labour Party coming in, but I hold no cards, so I've been down to Paddy Power already. Whatever happens with the new government, and I love the Keir Starmer build mantra that we got at party conference. We haven't had any of the detail yet, and we know why we haven't had any of the detail yet. The incoming party don't know what they don't know, and they've got to look under the bonnet, and they can't declare their hand until the starting pistol is fired. But one thing we do know is that the new town / garden communities are here to stay. And I think that totally and utterly protects the Cambridge delivery project. And I think it's an unassailable project. And I think providing all the senior civil servants are briefing properly, then I don't think there'll be a problem at all about the longevity of the project, nor indeed of many of the other large-scale garden communities and towns that we've got in process. And I would suggest there'll be some others that will be named. and thank God for it. I mean, we're in a real crisis with housing, and we need to be on a war footing, and I'm hoping that the Labour Party understand that. So to get to your question about Lord Heseltine, I started my career in the London Docklands Development Corporation before Canary Wharf was even a hole in the ground. That's how old I am. And Lord Heseltine, of course, was involved in that. But he wasn't anything like so involved as he was in Liverpool, for which he had a major passion, and it's a lifelong passion, and he's carried on with it, and he goes up there at even at the age of 91, he'll be up there at any excuse he's up there. The great thing that Lord Heseltine did for this country, although I have to say it was Greg Clark that did it rather than Lord Heseltine, but he couldn't have done it without Michael, is the push for devolution and for rewarding people who wanted to put their hands up for growth. And that's why I think Cambridgeshire, Peterborough are in such a good position right now. You've put your hands up for growth. You've got parts, and Dr. Nick talks about this very eloquently, there's parts of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough that really could do with some levelling up, that are in fact relatively quite poor, that could really benefit from this project. And I think you're in a very, very, very good position. But I have to say, devolution, to me, is the mantra. We couldn't do anything much worse than what's going on at the moment in Whitehall, frankly. And as far as I'm concerned, push the power out to people who know what they're doing. The experts in any place are the people who live there. Sorry if I'm becoming a bit boring.
No, not at all. And I just want to quickly jump back to the point Mike was making, in following on my point, to Mike's, that it wasn't, my point wasn't so much about taking things for granted. It was simply about having that ring binder, being prepared and being ready to say, and here's why. I think you're absolutely right. There will be an inexorable pull, whatever they want to do. Inexorable pull. The reality of the situation will pull them back to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I really resonate with the point you were making about Lord Heseltine, Jackie, but because I feel the kind of same passion for coming and getting involved in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, because it's aspirational for me. I want to be involved. It's an aspirational place. And if I could just ask Mike and then Peter to just have a couple of final, very quick thoughts, and then I shall dive into the audience, not literally, don't panic. And if you have any questions for the panel, I shall direct them. Mike.
Can I just pick up something that, oddly enough, we're bouncing around about people's questions to different questions, about government policy in relation to homes, okay? I first got involved in regeneration projects in Sunderland, which is the team I support, sadly. And at that stage, this is the 1990, there was a huge amount of money spent in regenerating the north side of Sunderland on the back of the Yards closure. And it all went into homes, okay? Which meant that the actual, back to the question on the sheet today, the actual building of communities didn't actually take place. The jobs did not come. And the result was you still have ingrained a lack of regeneration. Now, Cambridge is a completely different place with different issues, different needs. But I think it's still a warning. You can't just build houses. It has to be more than that. It has to have other stuff going on as well. And it's not just about the physical regeneration. It's also about some of the soft regeneration. So I think there are lessons to be learned, I think, from Michael Heseltine's work. And I think there's things we could take forward and learn in a very different environment like Cambridge.
I mean, there certainly are a lot of exciting models, as Jackie knows and I know, that can be deployed. I mean, we've got Goldsmith Street in Norwich is a great example of a really community-focused thing.
But that's interesting. But they're tiny. I mean, that's the point. I think they're tiny. We've managed, Peter's managed to get down the proposed growth in Cambridge to 150,000 homes. Is it 200 in that street in Norwich? The main development we're doing in Cambridge, which we think is huge, is Hartree. It's 5,400 homes. Michael Gove is talking about 150,000. So the scale of the task facing Peter is just mind-boggling. And the original request of 250,000 would have taken Cambridge from a relatively small city to the third biggest in the country. So what you've got over a very short period of time is a massive ask from Mr. Gove. And I think, therefore, the scale of what the challenge Peter has is really important. I'm not saying we can't learn from short and small-scale developments like in Norwich, but it is a different scale altogether.
If you could hand it to Peter, and I'm just going to quickly a word more that I absolutely take your point about the necessity to focus, but I do think I will remain of the view, I'm afraid, that there are lots of areas around Cambridge in the east of England that can support that, benefit from that, and feed into that. I think there's partnerships and collaboration waiting to be had. but it shouldn't necessarily be on your shoulders to deliver it.
Going from the metaphors of menus or balance sheets, I'll go to a kind of full symphony orchestra. And if you just had housing, that might be the strings, or something else the offices might be the percussion, or something else might be the retail. If you don't bring them all forward together in lockstep, it will fail. And you can't, a lot of developments just start with the valuable use. If you're not putting in the things that don't pay for themselves, like public open space and schools at the same time, the whole thing will fail. You won't get the take-up, you won't get the support. The locals will oppose it even if they supported it to begin with. So advancing on a kind of total symphonic front is what we must do.
I like the sound of that. I'm very musical. Right, I'm going to leap into the crowd and ask... Oh, don't go. I should know better. Has anybody got a question? The leader of Norfolk County Council, Councillor Kay Mason-Billig. Ask your question, please.
Yes, I was very interested to hear you mention Thetford, which of course is close to my heart. But having just come from a meeting with Aviva, they're very keen to see us do more on a regional basis. How do you see that working going forward, as we're now about to become a devolved area as well?
I'm going to direct that to Mike, and then to Peter, and then to Jackie, please.
The trite answer is I don't see that there's a problem. I'll just echoes Mike's thing. There is ways in which we can actually have proper links. It's interesting. I lived in King's Lynn for a long time and enjoyed my time there. And the benefit of Lynn is that it's 45 minutes, an hour from Cambridge. On a main line, there's 2 trains an hour. There is absolutely no reason with that sort of transport infrastructure that King's Lynn, Downham Market shouldn't benefit from what takes place in Cambridge. That's long been an aspiration, but it's never happened. And it's intriguing to know why that is, because people could and should be able to come into the city and work in the city, because it's not a million miles away. So there's something about how we take forward, if you like, words into real action and real genuine discussion about bringing jobs out towards, if you like, Lynn and Downham Market.
I think just to add to that before Peter comes in, Eastern Promise has been encouraging places like East Norfolk College and the Inspiration Trust to come out to the Schools Day at Cambridge Tech Week and see the level of the wide variety of the careers on offer. Peter, if I could ask you to respond quickly.
In sort of planning and development and growth, you end up sort of with political geographies, because political geographies grant planning consents and the democracy works to planning in that sense. But I think in reality, in any kind of economic geography is pretty different to political geography. And I think that employers, people looking for work, investors, look in a much wider sense, and they don't really care whether it's in Suffolk or Norfolk or Cambridge, as long as it's accessible and there's the right skills and talents there. I do wonder whether more could be done by the sort of Innovate Cambridge heads to widen their geography and their sort of membership.
Please hand that to Jackie for just a quick comment, and then we'll...
Can I say, I think that idea that Peter's just had about getting Innovate Cambridge to reach out and have collegiate relationships with all of you, I think is a really, really, really good idea. And I know where you're coming from. I mean, I've had similar meetings with people like Aviva who have said, look, we can't get out of bed for less than, 150 million or whatever it is. Can you please join up with your neighbours and give us some sort of geographically sensible thing that we can invest in, which is why we in the Innovation Corridor are trying to put together an investment platform to take out to market. We're going to take that out to Expo Real in October. So I think you're absolutely, the thought process is absolutely right. I think you might find that things improve radically once the Ely Junction project gets underway, because, as you know, that then connects Norfolk properly to Cambridge. And my only criticism of that is, why is everything taking so long? I was battling with Stephen Barclay about the Ely Junction project back in 2014, and here we are, and I know we've got the green light, but when are we going to get the thing? So, all I will say is let's just put the foot on the gas on that. But I think your thought process about joining up with your neighbours is absolutely the right one.
And I shall now very quickly hand the microphone to Prashant Shah of the O2H Group. Prashant.
Hi there. In terms of building community at its heart, I think we need to look at the uneven prosperity, and you've echoed that across the Cambridge region and across the Eastern region. So how important do you think the work of organisations like Form the Future are, where they spend a lot of time and effort inspiring kids and also bringing the business community inside the schools to show them career pathways of the skills that we need in the region? Because if we are going to grow with community at heart, we need to bring the young people with us and get them involved in the employment market and the future of what Cambridge and the Eastern region is about.
Alf, you're way ahead of me.
I think Form the Future, it's quite parochial. Form the Future, a careers-based organisation that are around Cambridge and do fabulous work. And I'm grateful. This isn't a blunt question. I met Anne Bailey 3 times in the last fortnight to look at their future. Because I said, to echo a previous answer, so I won't go on about it, unless young people who aren't genuinely interested in what's going on within the city are engaged, given aspirations and brought forward and work with businesses, then we have a problem, because we never change that inequality. So basically, this is an easy one for me, is you're right, and Form the Future are a vital part of that process.
Next question, please, because we're... Whoop. Today.
Hi there. Sorry, my name's Audley English, Disruptor. Take you back to 2017. We won the Sunday Times competition for delivering 1 million homes within the Oxford and Cambridge arc with 40 new garden villages. But to the centre of that, going back to my colleague's question, was about training of young people. Today I've brought along 50 young people, including women interested in architecture and all other industry across construction. And I walk around this exhibition and I don't see many young people. So my question is, how are you going to get young people into this industry if you don't have any representation at an exhibition like this?
I think that's kind of a question that the good people at UKREiiF need to answer. And I think the panel's done a fantastic job in sort of formalising, and Mike was just speaking to how they're working, Cambridge Wide Open Day, Cambridge Tech Week. There are lots of ways that they're showing the opportunities in Cambridge. Am I all right for time, Connie? Right. This is great. Emma, hello. Nice to see you.
So I've just come from the Corridor Pavilion, and my question is about cost-benefit analysis. There's a lot of projects out there claiming the benefits. How do we ensure that we actually do secure the benefits? Because my worry is there'll be a lot of projects that are double counting on their cost-benefit analysis, and we've got to look at how that holds, because the railway's taking the benefit of the cost-benefit analysis, the buses are taking it. How do we ensure the benefit actually goes back to the community?
Can I go Jackie Peter on this one, please?
Well, this is really tough stuff, actually, because, you lose me at cost benefits analysis. You lose me at the word cost, actually, because I can't get my head around any of it. I never have been able to, if the truth be known. And I struggle with Treasury. I've struggled with Treasury all my life. And I take a really simplistic view here, which is just outrageous and wrong. I know it's wrong, which is I don't bloody care. As far as I'm concerned, if the buses, if the rail system gets the credit, great. If the housing sector gets the credit, great. As long as it happens, I don't care how it happens and who gets the benefit. But I know that's wrong, and I know that we can't count it that way. And I think it's got to be counted in a much more rational way. And sorry, to try and answer your question properly and not in a flippant sort of way, I do think we do need to have really robust analysis done as to what is going to happen if we don't crack the housing crisis. What is the cost to this society of ours of homelessness, kids going to school hungry, without proper roof over their heads, all the stuff that we know about. We don't really have a proper, robust framework to judge our investments against. And better people than me would be better able to answer your question, Emma. But I do have to say, I think the whole way that Treasury has it set up at the moment is just completely wrong-footed. Peter will have a better idea than me.
Peter.
1 + 1 makes 5. Didn't they teach you that at school? I think the ways of getting business cases through is unbelievably arcane. But I do think the Treasury is increasingly allowing social benefits through in the case, and I think that's really important. But to an extent, why I stay as a humble project man is because I can actually see, if you go to a place, people out there and whether they're looking well and happy and healthy, and that, if I come back aged 93, even older than Heseltine to Cambridge, I want to see lots of people looking well and happy and healthy, and I don't care how you beg and borrow and steal the money to get there.
I think that's an excellent point, Peter. These things, that there's not always a place to enter them on a balance sheet, but those benefits are still just as important. Any more questions? Aha! Excuse me. Thank you, Michelle.
I'll go for a last one, back to community. So we've heard lots. Oh, is that still working? Heard lots today about business case. Different. Sorry, it keeps going in and out. But actually, talking about the community, how do we translate all this ambition into what does it mean for Bob? What does it mean for Jeff? What does it mean for Sally? The actual real people on the ground who will be scared about growth, and they will see growth as an obstacle, as noise, more traffic movement. And we've talked about, Peter, you talked about doing speed dating with parish councils next. That sounds tremendous fun. But actually, it's broader than parish councils, because sometimes they're not always connected to their communities as well, and they have different views from actually particularly the younger demographic that exist in those communities. So I'm really interested in sort of that last question, sort of 2 sentences on how do we make it relevant to the actual people on the ground rather than different community groups.
That's an excellent final question from Michelle Sachs there. Peter and then Mike, please.
Okay. I mean, I think of community as a series of overlapping Venn diagrams, and every person probably belongs to at least 3 or 4 communities, whether it's the street or the place of sport or the place of worship or the place of work or the bar they like to drink in. And in a way, making the journey from one community to another community for people easeful, so that they feel safe and ready to explore joining more communities, and there's kind of more of everything. There's more nice places to hang out or work or study. It goes back to the symphonic advance. It's not a single answer, because each person is a community in themselves or with their neighbours, and all those other Venn diagrams.
I think one of the odd things about Cambridge being an unequal city is often in other polls, it's the city that most people think is the nicest city to live, best city to live. And if we broaden that out to your area, Michelle, so Huntingdon, so if Bob in, I don't know, St Ives was to be asked the question, it's, have I got the opportunity to go for a better job? Is my home nicer? And when I go out in St Ives of an evening, have I got nice places to go? And the places that my family can enjoy, and green spaces that I can walk in. So that's what I would hope Bob will get ultimately from the work that we're trying to do in conjunction with central government to develop 2050. And if that happens, if Bob doesn't, he may not even realise that that's on the back of 2050, but if that happens, that would be a great outcome.
Any final words from the panel, or should we wrap this one up?
Well, just to say really about Sally and Jeff and Bob, one of the things we've got to do is to sell in the benefits of growth to Sally and Jeff and Bob, and I'm not sure we do that at all. Audley, who clearly needs to be totally celebrated and supported, is trying to do his best, but he refers to the target of 1 million new homes across Oxford, Cambridge. I have to say to you, Audley, that was a PR disaster for all the places in Oxford, Cambridge, across the Oxford, Cambridge arc, because, you know, the local community didn't understand and basically railed against the fact that they were going to have to absorb 1 million new homes. Nobody ever sold the benefits to the community. And I'm sorry, but that means you've got to put your doctor's surgeries in first. You've got to put your electricity in first. You've got to solve your water scarcity problem first. You've got to do all the things first in order to commend clean, green, inclusive growth to Bob and Sally and Jeff. Otherwise, they're going to rightly say, no, get off my backyard.
And, there is a very, when it comes to community engagement, there is always a very strong thread of, I'll believe it when I see it, when it's tangible. One of the joys of doing what I do is that you get to experience things at their shiniest. You get to, that's not necessarily true because we went to one of the poorest parts of Cambridgeshire to see the work Cambridge United were doing. But I believe you come to Cambridge, the crackle of potential and opportunities there, and I believe it can be shared and spread. We're going up to Manchester to see their side of the story. There is a fantastic opportunity here. It's so exciting. Our time is now. Sorry, President. Our time is now, and, really, can I ask you to give your thanks to this exceptional panel? You've been a fantastic audience. Thank you very much. You'll agree, I'm sure, that these discussions generated far more light than heat. And at the packed pavilion, comprising guests from Cambridgeshire, the wider east of England and beyond, spoke volumes about the level of interest in the debate. My thanks to Mayor Nick Johnson, Rob Bridge, Connie Anker and all the CPCA team for entrusting Eastern Promise and myself with such a landmark event on a hot-button topic for the city of Cambridge. We'll all now wait with bated breath to see what the incoming government makes of the case for Cambridge. Eastern Promise will be back at UKREiiF very soon for the second of our panel debates on making Peterborough Railway Station an international rail terminus with a thriving station quarter. Until then, bye for now. To hear other episodes of the Eastern Promise podcast and to find out more about what we do, go to our website at easternpromise.org.uk. Eastern Promise is a Priors Croft production in association with Mills and Reeve, achieving more together.